Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, thank you so much for your interest in this competition and learning more about the CoC No for Bills. I look forward to the presentation, and more importantly, I look forward to reading some of your project applications. I'm going to turn this over to Edwin and Stacy.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Edwin Pert. I'm a senior associate, part of the LaSar team, helping out with the CoCBuilds application. So happy to be here and happy to present the CoCBuilds Bidders Conference with you all. Stacy?
Good afternoon, I'm Stacy Calderon. I'm a senior associate with LaSar Development Consultants, and I'm happy to be with you guys on today.
Great, thank you. So you should see the screen now. So we just have a brief presentation for you all, and just a reminder that this is being recorded. So for those who are unable to attend today's Bidders Conference, it will be posted on the on MOHS's website along with the slide deck that we're going to be going through. Just a few housekeeping items. As mentioned, this webinar is going to be recorded. We are asking everyone to just mute their audio, and then updates are going to be sent through our listserv, and you can sign up here. I know we'll drop the link in the chat, and then we'll also make sure this is posted online. Application materials can be found on the MOHS website. The RFP, or request for proposals, has already been posted. So you should see that. We'll drop a link in the chat for that as well. And then if you have any questions between now and even after today's presentation, please email us at baltimorepsh@lasardevelopment.com. And I'm going to ask if Stacy can drop that in the chat as well. So you'll see a few things coming through the chat. Okay. Quick overview. We have an agenda here. We've done our welcome and overview. We're going to go over the timeline, HUD's funding priorities, and just overall eligibility. We're also going to briefly discuss HUD's policy priorities. Then we'll get a little more specific on the threshold requirements for CoCBuilds, project applications, and then match requirements. And then we'll open it up for general Q&A before we wrap up. Okay, so what is CoCBuilds? So the Continuum of Care builds notice of funding opportunity, which we refer to as the CoCBuilds NOFO, targets efforts within the CoC geographic area of Baltimore to address and reduce persons experiencing homelessness by adding new units of permanent supportive housing, or PSH, and that is through new construction, acquisition, or rehabilitation through one-time CoCBuilds awards through the program. This is the first year of CoCBuilds, so it's really exciting. HUD has made available approximately $175 million through this notice of funding opportunity. The minimum award amount is $1 million, and for the Baltimore geographic area, the maximum award amount is $7.5 million. We'll be going over this a little bit more in depth. We'll be going more in depth on this in a few slides, but just wanted to note that the maximum award amount is $7 million. And then HUD expects to make roughly 25 awards from the funds that have been made available through this NOFO. So it's a really exciting program, but also highly competitive. So we just wanted to make sure we took the time today to walk you through some of the nuts and bolts of the NOFO. Okay, so as mentioned on the previous slide, CoCBuilds targets efforts within CoC geographic areas to reduce and address persons experiencing homelessness by adding new units of permanent supportive housing. Before we get into the weeds, just wanted to ground us in what permanent supportive housing is. So PSH, or permanent supportive housing, is housing in which housing assistance and supportive services are provided to assist households with at least one member, that can be an adult or a child, with a disability in achieving housing stability. So PSH will be supported through new construction, acquisition, or rehab. And the estimated period of performance is from 2025 through 2030. I also just wanted to quickly note, and you'll see this in the NOFO, that they mention converting hotels or motels from their original use to PSH is a likely more cost effective than constructing new units of permanent supportive housing. So just wanted to lift that up as you consult the NOFO. And then also wanted to note that applicants should consider whether there's an opportunity to use properties made available through the Title V process. That's the federal surplus property for use to assist the homeless. So more information can be found in the NOFO. And if Stacy, you might be able to drop the link in the chat. It's in the notes of this slide. But you'll also see it in the NOFO. So just wanted to note those things. And now I'm going to pass it to Stacy to walk us through eligibility.
Thank you, Edwin. So who are the eligible applicants for this program? So the Continuums of Care appointed is a collaborative applicant to host this local competition. And so one application will be submitted to HUD. So organizations that are eligible include nonprofit organizations with 501c3 status, housing authorities, local governments. And we want to stress that all applicants should have at least 4 other projects that have a similar scope and scale as the project that will be proposed in their application. Next slide, please. So the maximum award amount. So for a single project within Baltimore's geographic area, we want to stress that that's 7.5 million. And this maximum award amount is based on the CoC's final pro rata need for the fiscal year 2024 CoC competition. We have a chart here that just shows the minimum and maximum awards for the ranges of FPRN amounts. Next slide. So this is a 2-step application process. This RFP is part of the first selection of a partner for the application for CoCBuilds. Once we select our partner through this RFP process, the CoC will work with that selected partner to create the best application to be submitted to HUD. As a collaborative applicant, we'll be submitting an application via grants.gov in November. So this is an overview of the CoCBuilds timeline. There was a launch of this RFP on August 30th. This is the bidders conference, September 12th. There is a Q&A deadline of September 20th. So please get those questions in, and we will be releasing the Q&A addendum on September 27th. The application deadline for this program is October 18th at 3 p.m. Please plan to submit your applications before that 3 p.m. timeline. Applications will be scored between October 14th and November 4th, and we will be announcing awardees the awardee November 11th through the 15th. And then our team will be working to submit the application into grants.gov between the 18th and the 21st deadline. And so this is the in-depth CoCBuilds application timeline. This is included on the website and the RFP. I'm not going to go in depth since we just reviewed that overview. I would say take some time to review this. And if you have any questions on the timeline, please ask those at the end of the presentation. So funding priorities and eligibility. So what are the eligible projects? We're looking for projects that propose permanent supportive housing and supportive services, can be housed in site-based location or scattered site for supportive services. The targeted population for these projects should be chronically homeless with disabilities. It could be individuals or families that have an individual that have a disability. And some of the eligible uses for the funding include new construction, acquisition, rehabilitation, non-capital costs, are limited to no more than 20% of what you're submitting for, and an administrative cost no more than 10% of your total budget. Some of the HUD policy priorities include these 6 goals for the competition. Again, I'm not going to review all of them, but I would highly recommend that you review these and consider them within your narratives for the application. So some of them include increasing housing opportunities for people with high risk levels of need. So a real focus on the target population, increase the supply of permanent supportive housing units within the CoC geographic area. So really recommending good projects that really increase the number of permanent supportive housing for this area. And then making sure that you stress the relationship you have with housing providers, healthcare organizations, and social service providers. And then I'll leave it up to you to review the rest and include those in your application. Next slide, Edwin.
Okay, so we're just going to briefly go over threshold requirements. As Stacy mentioned earlier, the NOFO requires at least 4 other projects that have a similar scope and scale as the proposed project. That is of utmost importance. So make sure that when you're submitting applications that you meet that threshold requirement. We're also going to be looking for demonstrated financial and managerial capacity and experience to really carry out this project. So we want to see that narrative lifted up in the application. Obviously, the population served and the housing type as permanent supportive housing needs to be lifted up in the application. That's a general eligibility requirement. This NOFO is just for permanent supportive housing. Also, ensure you're participating in coordinated entry. You're committed to a housing first approach, and some other requirements such as the match minimum, which we'll go over at a high level later. And then just making sure project costs they're reasonable and they're financially feasible. Now we want to get a little more granular into the application itself. So some of this is a little redundant, but that's intentional because we want to make sure that it's very clear what this application is asking for. So we want you to include capital costs for new construction or acquisition or rehab, whatever the application proposes for new permanent supportive housing units. And this can also include costs for other eligible CoC program costs. So for example, for this NOFO, HUD will award no more than 20% of the final award for non-capital costs. Those include, for use in project-based rental assistance, operating costs, supportive services, things of that nature. And then additionally, HUD will award no more than 10% of the total budget for project administrative costs. We are also requiring proof of site control prior to execution of the grant agreement, and then completed environmental review before awarded funds can be drawn for project activities. Just want to be very clear that those are not required for the submission of the RFP in October per our timeline. This is prior to execution of the grant agreement. So just wanted to be clear that these things aren't necessarily required when you submit your application in about a month or so to MOHS. Here is a snapshot of the scoring table. So maximum points available are 100 and a page limit of 25. This is going to be really important because these are the same requirements that HUD is asking for when we go to submit our application through grants.gov. So when you submit your application to MOHS in October, just make sure that you're following the page limit because we're gonna that's in the evaluation criteria. So this just spells it out at a high level, and now we're going to take a little bit of time to kind of just walk through each of these categories. So as part of submission requirements, we're requiring a cover page and a table of contents to just really, demonstrate the organization of the entire application. We'll be asking for background information. So The intent of the project, just a short summary. We want to hear information about the applicant, which includes all related parties. So not just the developer, but also the property manager and the supportive services arm. We're really asking for a comprehensive application that can also, develop the project, operate the project, and manage the project. And then you'll see these things listed under project or proposal narrative. We have about 12 items. I'm not going to go through them on this slide because we have a few others that really walk through each of these components. So for proposal narrative, the first is development experience and leveraging. And so as mentioned, as part of that threshold requirement, we really just want to make sure that you have at least 4 other projects of similar size and scope and scale as the proposed project. And then we also want to see how you might be leveraging other resources similar to the funds that are being proposed in the current project. So that could mean tax credits, CDBG, other funding sources. And we also want to hear or see information regarding the availability of low-income housing tax credit commitments, PBVs, and other resources that are dedicated to the project. Moving on to managing homeless projects, we want to make sure that you're really demonstrating that your organization, which may include other parties, whether it's property management or supportive services. Again, we want to, see that comprehensive application, have experience administering programs for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. We also are asking for an implementation schedule, so a timeline. And then for property maintenance, want to make sure that the property is maintained annually to prevent unnecessary costly repairs. Number 5, unmet housing need. We really want you to describe the population that will be served by the project and the level of unmet need for new units of permanent supportive housing in your area for that population. And moving on to item 6, management of rental housing. So describing the projects that you've managed to really demonstrate that property management experience. We also want to see the number of grants for affordable housing awarded over the last 3 years or so, the total amount of those rewards, and the type of subsidy funding or financing provided for housing. And then also just specify the number of assisted and non-assisted units in each property that you list. Coordinated entry, we want you to demonstrate how the project will use the CoC's coordinated entry process for coordination with housing providers, healthcare organizations, and social service providers. Just want to make sure that the project is leveraging non-CoC funded housing resources through coordination with housing providers, as well as healthcare organizations and social service providers, whether that's for new construction, AC, or rehab, to provide at least 50% of the amount being requested in the application, or whether the project is leveraging non-CoC funded housing resources to provide subsidies for at least 25% of the units that are proposed in the application. Moving on to experience promoting racial equity, just want to make sure that the applicant has experience soliciting, obtaining, and applying input from underserved groups where designing, planning, and implementing housing projects. We also want to see experience building community partnerships with grassroots and resident-led organizations that provide housing, healthcare, and supportive services. And then experience really designing or operating programs that have improved racial equity with a particular focus among people experiencing homelessness. So this is some of the narrative. I know it sounds like a mouthful, but just make sure as you're describing these things in a comprehensive yet concise way, you're still paying attention to the page limit in some of those for these narratives. Community integration for persons with disabilities, just demonstrating how PSH will enable program participants to make meaningful choices about housing and healthcare and long-term services and supports. And then the Section 3 requirement, just describing the actions that that will be taken by project applicants to comply with Section 3 of the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968. And for more information, we're encouraging folks to visit the NOFO and our RFP that's posted on the website. And again, we'll post the links in the chat for you to access. And then for proposal narrative, these are forms that we will be requiring as part of the application. These forms, although they're required, they have not been, they're not posted in the RFP that's on MOHS's website, but we are working to make sure that these forms will be made available to you all because they're required. So as part of the addendum and Q&A addendum, we'll be posting additional resources.
I'm sorry, Edwin. I just want to step in. These forms are available on the MOHS grant website.
Oh, apologies, yikes. Thanks, Stacy. All right, I'm turning it to you, Stacy.
All right, so for the budget submissions, there is a match requirement. So there is a match. You got to bring resources, which can be cash or in-kind resources or a combination of both that will be contributed to the grant activities. All costs must be eligible under the activities under the CoC program. The match must amount to about 25 or not amount to the 25% or more of the awarded amount or the amount that you're submitting for, excluding any leasing costs. These match funds or resources can be from private or public sources, and you must document these resources on a monthly basis with expenditure reports if you are awarded through the program. Next slide, please. So here are some reminders as we're going through this process. The selected grant application must be submitted through grants.gov. That's our team working with the selected applicant of this RFP. Please carefully review the MOHS website and the NOFO that we've submitted to you in the chat. That's from HUD. And please, after you've reviewed those materials, ask questions by the deadline. And this is the email that you can submit those questions to. Next slide, please. So this is your time. If you have any questions now, we'll open it up if you want to raise your hand and we will allow you to speak. Otherwise, if you have additional questions, like we've said, please submit that to the email address that we've provided. No questions? I know it's a lot of information. You'll probably have to digest it a little bit. Don't see any hands up.
I see. I think I see
a question.
a question.
Yeah, a question was put in the chat. Yeah, about Davis-Bacon.
I believe so, but I'm not sure. That'll be a question, and we already have a running list of questions that we're addressing in the Q&A addendum. So that will be one that we also include there as well.
Any other questions? We can jump back to slides and guide you through anything.
Oh, I think there's another. Oh, no, sorry. That's just a comment. No worries. Thanks, Donovan, for the question. I'll just note, we also had a question about the maximum award amount. So just wanted to reiterate that the maximum award amount for the Baltimore region is $7.5 million. I think if you look at the table that's in the NOFO, it's easy to assume that the maximum award amount for Baltimore's region is 10 million, but as Stacy mentioned earlier, it's 7.5. So just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that. And that question will also be addressed in the Q&A addendum that's posted, I think on the deadline is the 20th. So after that. Actually, it'll be posted on the 27th. So again, if there aren't any questions, we can give 30 minutes back. Appreciate your time. And if you do have questions, please email us at baltimorepsh@lasardevelopment.com. And we will be monitoring that and responding. And any questions that come through that email, we will make sure they're included in the addendum. And just a reminder that, this presentation along with the recording will be posted to the website. So for those who were unable to attend, you'll have access to these materials. Okay. Thank you all so much. And we are giving 31 minutes back. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.